From WisPolitics in Madison, you're listening to Capital Chats.
Good morning, and welcome to Capital Chats, sponsored by Spectrum. I'm Joshua Irvin, a reporter for WisPolitics. Today, I spoke with Amy Barrilleaux, a spokesperson for Clean Wisconsin. They are an environmental group pushing for renewable power in Wisconsin, and one of many groups concerned about the explosion of data center developments in the state. We spoke about the current regulatory framework, or lack thereof, for data centers in Wisconsin, and what a utilities proposal before the Public Service Commission and a Republican-backed bill in the legislature could mean for ratepayers and the environment. Well, thank you, Amy, for taking the time to talk to me today. I wanted to start with the We Energies proposal that is before the Public Service Commission. Could you talk to me about the implication of this case for Wisconsin ratepayers?
Well, this is considered a tariff case for very large customers. So, We Energies is trying to create a special tariff or payment structure for very large users coming into the state. And when we talk about very large users, right now we're talking about AI data centers. So, these data centers, a 1 gigawatt data center, which is in this moment kind of the average size of the ones coming to Wisconsin, according to our calculations, use as much energy as 1 million Wisconsin homes. So we're talking about an enormous amount of energy that's going to be needed to power these data centers, and then all the infrastructure that goes with that, and all the expense that goes with building all of those things. So this case is meant for We Energies, for its large load customers that are coming in, which would be the Microsoft data center in Mount Pleasant, and then the Vantage data center in Port Washington, to set a price structure, how those are going to be handled when it comes to paying for the energy they use and the infrastructure that is needed to supply them. So We Energies is basically proposing that the data center tech companies pay 75% of all those costs, and then the rest is kind of spread out among all of its customers all across Wisconsin. And that might sound good, but we're talking about billions of dollars worth of infrastructure that's going to be needed to power these data centers. And so Clean Wisconsin has intervened in that tariff case. We're calling for really 100% of the cost to be covered by these tech companies that are coming here to Wisconsin, to shield regular Wisconsinites as much as possible. So that's really kind of at the center of the case. But there's also, we are really pushing for a greater ability to meet these demands with wind and solar energy. So that's another part of the case that's being argued right now. It is very complicated, and it is extremely hard to shield all customers from every penny of expense that's going to be brought in by these data centers in order to power them. So it's a complicated case. There are a lot of non-disclosure agreements in place for interveners who are in this case. So there's not a lot that I can talk about or even know, because our attorneys are working and have to sign non-disclosure agreements in order to even be able to work on this case. So, but that's a big picture. It's a huge issue as these data centers come into Wisconsin.
Gotcha. And I understand that part of the concern and part of your guys' push for using more renewable energy when it comes to these very large customers, to these data centers, is concerned that this will kind of perpetuate the use of fossil fuels, delay the retirement of coal plants and continue construction of natural gas plants. Could you talk to me a little bit about those concerns?
I mean, it's not just a concern, it's the reality of what's happening here in Wisconsin. So, Microsoft came in, announced a data center, and within months, we had a huge natural gas burning power plant proposed and now approved for We Energies to power that data center. So, you're talking about a new liquid natural gas pipeline, liquid natural gas storage facility, 2 new gas burning power plants that are going to be emitting harmful chemicals in the communities where they are located. So that's how we're seeing it play out. You might see tech companies coming in and talking about all these great things, and clean energy and all that. But the way we're seeing it playing out in Wisconsin is that communities are being harmed. We've seen delayed coal plant retirements. We're seeing other large, very large gas plants being proposed and being fast tracked within the state of Wisconsin. So, yeah, I think we need to right now figure out what to do about the tremendous needs that are going to be coming because of the data centers that have already been approved and how to meet those with as little harm as possible. So that means clean wind and clean solar, which don't pollute our communities, being built to meet the needs of these data centers that have already been approved. And again, this is just an enormous amount of electricity need. We Energies is expecting to double its electricity sales in the next few years because of these data centers. That should be eye-opening to everybody that hears that.
All right. And I understand that, part of the reason that this We Energies proposal before the PSC matters so much is because we don't really have any state laws regulating data centers, regulating what kind of energy they use, or for that matter, what they will pay versus the average ratepayer. There is a GOP authored bill that is passed in the Assembly that its supporters say will insulate ratepayers from data center costs. I wanted to ask what is Clean Wisconsin's position on this bill?
Well, I think it's notable that there is a bill from GOP lawmakers that has passed the assembly because I think it's a recognition that they are hearing a lot of pushback from constituents all across Wisconsin. And certainly energy bills is one of the top concerns, and not the only concern by far. And so I think the motive is probably well intentioned, at least when it comes to bills. It's obviously far more complicated to shield customers from those costs than just one single bill within the legislature. And Wisconsin is particularly vulnerable because we do not have what's called integrated resource planning. So our energy utilities don't have to have any kind of plan for how they meet these needs, any kind of structured plan that is reviewed by the state. They don't have to show how all of these power plants that they build are going to meet our needs, but not overbuild to, cost people too much money. So having a bill that seeks to do this is inadequate, although it is a notable effort to try to shield consumers from these tech companies and their data centers. What's really unfortunate about the bill is that it discriminates against the clean wind and solar energy that I just talked about. So, by requiring, all the clean energy that might be built to meet a data center's needs on data center property, which those buildings are huge and those campuses are big for a reason because they have to accommodate all those buildings, is really just discriminating against clean energy in this situation and leading to more harm for our communities. Right now, we need to be laser focused on doing everything we can to meet the needs of these data centers that have already been approved with clean wind and solar energy and battery storage that helps lessen the harm to our communities. But we also need to really pause all these data center approvals until we can understand what is going on in Wisconsin, what is going to be the impact to our waterways, to our energy systems, to our communities. How are we going to meet the needs of these data centers that use more energy than all the homes in Wisconsin combined? And that's just the approved data centers in Wisconsin. So this bill, it's got some things that I think are, hoping to help people, but then it's got obviously huge drawbacks that really discriminates against the cheapest way to produce energy in the state, which is wind and solar.
So I should have mentioned that Clean Wisconsin is part of the Clean Economy Coalition of
Mhm.
Wisconsin, which, as you said, has called for a pause on new data center proposals. Um, I guess I want to come back to some, your comments about this bill in the legislature. The way you're talking, it sounds like you guys are of the position that that Wisconsin's whole framework for kind of regulating energy development is sort of inadequate
Right.
for to deal with these data centers. So we're talking about a uh, almost almost structural reform to our to the way that the PSC operates and that energy infrastructure writ large in Wisconsin. Is that what we mean?
Yeah. I mean, Wisconsin is, as I said, very vulnerable because what we've got is tax incentives that have worked really well to bring AI data centers here, but we have no planning process for the very complex nature of our energy system that, as I mentioned, the integrated resource planning, which is many states do have, Wisconsin does not. So we really flung up open the door pretty wide for AI data centers to come here, and then we don't have much structure to deal with that, and so we do need really kind of an all hands on deck moment of our regulators, our local lawmakers, our state lawmakers to come together and figure out what does this mean for Wisconsin. We cannot have our state's largest utility saying it's going to double its energy sales, its electricity sales in just a few years, and then not think that that is meaningful, right? That is, how many power plants is that? Where are they going to be? How much are they going to cost? What if a data center in a few years isn't needed in Wisconsin? What are we going to do with that big gas burning power plant or that big new nuclear facility that we're in the middle of building and spending $10 billion on? What are we going to do with that? Those are questions that need to be asked, and they need to be asked urgently because, as I've said, the amount of demand and need from these data centers just for electricity alone, we're not even talking about water, is eye-opening. We should all be sitting here saying, well, how are we going to handle this? Because that's a question that we do not have the answer to.
One last question for you. I think in the vein of your prior comments, in recent weeks, data center developers have dropped out of two proposed projects, one in DeForest and one in Carlton, in large part due to pushback from residents. Um, what do you think, developers and policymakers alike should make of this pushback? And how should it inform kind of decision making on in the world of data centers?
I think people really need to take note of that. What we're seeing, and I'm sure they are too, are really grassroots level opposition to these data centers in communities. People are angry. They are feeling like there is not enough transparency. They don't know what's going on. There are non disclosure agreements. They don't hear about a data center until the deals have already been done. And people don't like to be treated that way. They don't want to be treated that way at the local level or at the state level by their utilities, who are often, making these deals, buying up little land parcels for the data centers, and then actively luring them here because building energy infrastructure means guaranteed profits for our energy utilities. And so people are getting angry and they are pushing back. And think that's certainly what happened in DeForest, where it started to become clear that the approvals that were needed for that data center to come in were not going to happen. And that's happening really across the board on both sides of the aisle. People are feeling like some of the richest companies in the world are coming to Wisconsin because we have land, we have water, and we have energy utilities that are actively courting them, and we have favorable tax incentives here. And they're not happy about it. You don't have to look far to find, a lot of anger. And I think that's why lawmakers are beginning to come up with some bills in hopes of, having some accountability for these tech companies.
Amy, thank you very much.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thank you again to Amy Barrilleaux, to Spectrum, and to you, the listener. I'm Joshua Irvin with WisPolitics, and this has been Capital Chats.